The morning started like any other at the Pentagon's Joint Operations Center. Major Jessica Steele Storm Walker was reviewing training protocols when the first alerts lit up every screen in the facility. Massive vessels, each one larger than Manhattan, had materialized just beyond Luna's orbit. Their crystalline structures caught the sunlight, casting prismatic shadows across Earth's surface. Within hours, the world's military forces were on high alert. Fighter jets scrambled, missile systems activated, and special forces units deployed globally. But the visitors made no aggressive moves. Instead, they sent a single message in perfect English: "We come to judge." The first landing took place on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The vessel that descended was smaller than its orbital counterparts, but still dwarfed the Washington Monument. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury, defying every known law of physics. As the ship settled, a delegation of beings emerged that made the assembled human representatives gasp. The aliens stood 12 feet tall, their bodies composed of living crystal that shifted colors with their movements. They called themselves the Eternal Council, representatives of the Galactic Confederation. Their leader, who introduced himself as the Grand Arbiter, spoke with a voice that seemed to resonate within the minds of all present. "Your species has been observed," the Grand Arbiter announced, his crystalline form pulsing with blue light. "You stand at a crossroads. The Confederation requires all emergent species to prove their worth through our ancient trials of combat. Success means integration into the galactic community. Failure." His form darkened to a deep purple. "Failure means permanent quarantine." The assembly of world leaders erupted in chaos. The Chinese premier demanded details. The Russian president called for immediate military action. The American president tried to negotiate alternative terms, but it was Major Walker, standing at attention near the back, who caught the Grand Arbiter's attention. "You speak of combat trials," she said, her voice cutting through the clamor. "What exactly do these trials entail?" The Grand Arbiter's crystal form shimmered with what might have been amusement. "Each species must demonstrate their martial prowess in a series of challenges. Most emerging races require years of preparation to even attempt such tests." Walker stepped forward, her combat ribbons and special forces insignia clearly visible. "And if we were ready now?" The assembled aliens emitted a sound like chiming bells, their version of laughter. "Impossible," the Grand Arbiter declared. "Your species has barely mastered spaceflight. You cannot possibly." "Show us," Walker interrupted, drawing shocked looks from both humans and aliens. "Show us your best warrior. Right now." The Grand Arbiter's form shifted to a brilliant white. Another crystal being stepped forward, its form more angular and aggressive. "Challenger Nexus will demonstrate why your haste is foolish," the Grand Arbiter said. What happened next would be replayed on every screen across Earth and throughout the Confederation. As Challenger Nexus launched forward with superhuman speed, Walker moved like water. Every attack the alien initiated was deflected, redirected, or avoided with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the crystal being's understanding of combat. When Walker finally struck back, it was with a combination that demonstrated centuries of human martial evolution. A boxing slip into a judo throw, transitioning to a joint lock that sent the massive crystal being crashing to the ground. The silence that followed was deafening. "Humanity accepts your challenge," Walker announced, helping the fallen alien to its feet. "And we're ready now." The Grand Arbiter's color had shifted to a deep red. "Impossible," he whispered. "You have combat masters among you already." Walker's smile was both professional and predatory. "Grand Arbiter, we have entire civilizations built on combat mastery. The only question is, are you ready for what humanity can really do?" As the sun set over Washington, the crystal ships glowed like new stars in the sky. The challenge had been issued and accepted. Humanity's time to prove itself had come, and Major Jessica Walker had just shown the galaxy that Earth's warriors were far more than anyone had expected. 3 days after the challenge acceptance, the Pentagon's underground training facility had been transformed. Holographic displays provided by the Confederation showed combat data from 100 different worlds. Major Walker stood before a panel of screens, her expression focused as she studied the alien combat forms. "They're all following the same pattern," she explained to the Joint Chiefs. "Every species relies on technological augmentation. None of them have developed pure combat arts like we have." The selection process for Earth's combat team had drawn warriors from every corner of the planet. In the main training arena, Master Sergeant Marcus "Thunder" Thompson, a Force Recon Marine with multiple combat tours, demonstrated the explosive power of Marine Corps martial arts against a holographic opponent. Nearby, Svetlana Petrova, former Russian Special Forces and Sambo champion, moved with lethal grace as she adapted her techniques to counter the crystal being's height advantage. Her innovations in ground fighting had already proven essential against the towering aliens. "Watch their center of mass," Walker called out as she entered the training floor. "The crystal structure has weak points where the segments connect, just like human joint locks, but on a larger scale." The Confederation observers stationed in the facility shifted uncomfortably. Their color patterns showed increasing concern as they watched humans not just learning, but innovating and improving combat techniques that had remained static for millennia. James Chen, a former Navy SEAL and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, was working with Aisha Hassan, an Egyptian Special Forces operator known for her mastery of multiple combat disciplines. Together, they had developed a new fighting style that combined traditional grappling with the unique challenges of fighting crystalline opponents. "The key is adaptation," Walker explained to the assembled team. "They expect us to follow their combat protocols. Instead, we're going to show them something they've never seen before." The training session was interrupted by the arrival of the Grand Arbiter himself. His crystalline form towered over the humans, but his posture showed a new respect that hadn't been present during first contact. "We have reviewed your species' combat history," he announced, his tone carrying an edge of disbelief. 500 distinct combat styles. Thousands of years of martial evolution. How is it possible that your kind developed such diversity in warfare? Walker's response was to invite him to observe a live sparring session. The team demonstrated how a single human fighter could seamlessly switch between boxing, wrestling, judo, and dozens of other styles mid-combat. The display of fluid adaptation left the alien leader visibly shaken. "Your species," he said finally, "has turned combat into both art and science." This was unexpected. The day's training concluded with a full team demonstration. Each member showed their specialty. Thompson's devastating strike combinations, Petrova's ground control techniques, Chen's submission expertise, and Hassan's tactical integration of multiple styles. As the Confederation observers filed out, their crystal bodies dimmed with what could only be described as worry, Walker gathered her team. "Tomorrow, we begin the real training," she announced. "They've shown us their techniques, their limitations, and their expectations. Now we show them what happens when human innovation meets warrior spirit." The team stood in formation, a living testament to Earth's martial heritage. From the ancient battlefields of Earth to the stars above, human combat arts had evolved through blood, sweat, and unwavering determination. Now that legacy would be tested against the galaxy's best. As night fell over the facility, the holographic displays continued to flicker with combat data. But now they showed something new. Humans moving in ways that defied the Confederation's combat algorithms, creating fighting styles that had never existed before. The galaxy had expected to find primitive warriors. Instead, they had found combat masters who had turned fighting into an art form. And this was only the beginning. The zero-gravity combat arena hung like a massive sphere of light, in the space between Earth and Luna. Inside, Major Walker floated at the center of the training zone, her space-adapted combat suit gleaming under the artificial stars. The Confederation had given Earth's team 1 hour to acclimate before the first match. They'd only needed 10 minutes. "Remember your training," Walker's voice carried through the team's secure channel. "They think 0G will neutralize our advantage. Let's show them how wrong they are." The first challenger emerged from the opposite gate, a crystalline being from the Centauri systems, its body modified with gravitic enhancers. The alien's name translated to Starbreaker, and it had never lost a 0G match. As the signal to begin flashed across the arena, Starbreaker launched forward with devastating speed. But Walker was already moving, using a modified Aikido technique that turned the alien's momentum against it. The crystal being spun out of control, its gravitic systems unable to compensate for the unexpected redirection. Impossible, the alien's thoughts broadcasted across the arena's neural network. "Your species has no experience in null-gravity combat." Walker's response was physical rather than verbal. She used the arena's walls as launch points, combining Brazilian jiu-jitsu with gymnastics to create a three-dimensional fighting style that left the spectators stunned. Each movement flowed into the next, a deadly dance that the crystal being couldn't predict or counter. The match ended with a technique that would later be studied across the galaxy, a 0G adaptation of a judo throw that sent Starbreaker spinning into the submission zone. The arena's screens flashed with Earth's first victory. But the day was far from over. Svetlana Petrova faced off against a warrior from the Rigel colonies, their body enhanced with combat computers that could calculate trajectories in milliseconds. The alien never had a chance to use them. Petrova's Sambo techniques, modified for 0G, overwhelmed the computer's ability to predict human movement patterns. James Chen's match against a quantum-enhanced fighter from the Pleiades cluster became an instant classic. The alien could exist in multiple combat positions simultaneously, yet Chen's Brazilian jiu-jitsu mastery found ways to control every possible position. The sight of a human submitting a quantum fighter left the Confederation's combat theorists in disarray. "They're not just adapting," the Grand Arbiter observed from the command platform. "They're creating an entirely new combat form." Master Sergeant Thompson's victory proved the most spectacular. Faced with 3 opponents from the Sirius Defense Force, he demonstrated why Marine Corps combat training was feared even on Earth. His movements combined boxing, wrestling, and battlefield tactics into something the arena's recording systems struggled to track. The final match of the day saw Aisha Hassan revolutionize space combat. Her opponent, a strategic combat computer in crystalline form, had calculated 14 million possible combat scenarios. Hassan defeated it with a combination that existed in none of them, using the 0G environment to execute a perfect crescent kick that transitioned into a joint lock. As the Earth team regrouped in their ready room, the arena's neural networks buzzed with unprecedented activity. Spectators from 100 worlds debated what they'd witnessed. Combat styles that had remained static for millennia were being transformed by human innovation. "This changes everything," the Grand Arbiter announced to his council. "They haven't just mastered combat. They've elevated it to an art form we never imagined possible." Walker gathered her team, their space suits still gleaming from the battles. "Today was just the beginning," she said, her voice filled with pride. "We've shown them that human combat arts can adapt to any environment. Tomorrow, we show them why Earth's warriors are truly unprecedented." As the arena's lights dimmed, the recording systems continued to analyze the day's matches. But no amount of processing power could fully explain what they'd witnessed: the birth of a new era in galactic combat, where human ingenuity had transformed ancient arts into something the stars had never seen before. The Confederation's Great Archive, A crystalline structure that orbited Earth like a second moon, hummed with unprecedented activity. The Grand Arbiter stood before the central knowledge core, his form shifting through shades of deep blue as he processed the information before him. 573, he announced to the assembled council. That is the number of distinct combat styles humans have developed throughout their history, each one born from different cultures, climates, and conflicts. The display showed footage from Earth's history, ancient Greek pancration fighters, Japanese samurai practicing their arts, Brazilian Val Tudo matches, Russian combat sambo championships, and modern military training sessions. Major Walker stood at the back of the chamber, watching as the alien leaders tried to comprehend what they were seeing. "You had access to this information before," she said. "Why does it surprise you now?" The Grand Arbiter's form rippled. "We assumed these were primitive attempts at combat, replaced by superior technology as your species advanced. Instead," he gestured at a hologram showing a modern MMA fight. "You kept refining them, combining them, evolving them." In the training facility below, James Chen was demonstrating this evolution in real time. He moved through a series of techniques that began with traditional Wing Chun, flowed into modern boxing, and finished with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Each transition was seamless, each movement adapted for combat against crystalline opponents. "Your species never stopped learning," a council member observed, their form glowing with fascination. "While we focused on technological enhancement, you perfected the art of combat itself." The archives projected new images, Svetlana Petrova teaching a group of crystal warriors how wrestling could be modified for their form. Master Sergeant Thompson demonstrating how Marine Corps martial arts incorporated centuries of combat knowledge. Aisha Hassan explaining the principles of Egyptian staff fighting to amazed alien observers. But this is not the most remarkable discovery. The Grand Arbiter continued. His form shifted to a bright purple as he activated another display. "Observe." The hologram showed footage from the previous day's training. Walker's team combining different styles mid-combat, creating new techniques on the spot, adapting ancient moves to counter alien abilities. "You don't just preserve these arts," a council member said. "You transform them. Every combat encounter becomes an opportunity for innovation." Walker stepped forward, her movement drawing every crystalline eye in the chamber. "On Earth, we have a saying, adapt and overcome. It's not just about learning the techniques, it's about understanding the principles behind them, then applying those principles to new situations." The archives displays shifted again, showing humans throughout history training in different environments. Desert warfare, Arctic combat, urban fighting, and now space combat. Each setting had produced its own adaptations, its own innovations. This is why you could adapt so quickly to zero-gravity combat, the Grand Arbiter realized. Your entire history is built on combat adaptation. In that moment, the Confederation's greatest scholars finally understood what they were witnessing. Humanity hadn't just preserved their combat arts. They had created a living, evolving system of martial knowledge that spanned millennia. The chamber fell silent as the final analysis appeared, a prediction model showing how human combat techniques could transform galactic warfare. The possibilities were both thrilling and terrifying. "We must reconsider our position," the Grand Arbiter announced. "These humans are not simply warriors. They are combat artists, innovation masters, living repositories of martial knowledge that our civilization has lost." As the council chambers emptied, Walker remained behind, studying the displays of Earth's combat history. 573 styles, each one a testament to human ingenuity and determination. And now, in the vastness of space, those styles were evolving once again. The art of war had come to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The underwater combat chamber on Europa's ocean facility stretched for half a mile in every direction. Major Walker floated in the pressurized depths, her advanced diving suit moving like a second skin. The Confederation had designed this challenge expecting humans to falter in the alien environment. They'd forgotten about Navy SEALs. 4 targets, multiple angles of attack. She transmitted to her team. Remember your combat diving training. We own these waters. The first wave of crystal warriors emerged from the depths, their forms altered to move effortlessly through the liquid environment. They expected easy victories. What they found was a team of humans who had mastered the art of underwater combat decades ago. James Chen struck first, his movements a perfect adaptation of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for underwater combat. The Crystal Warrior found itself trapped in a submission hold that used the water's pressure to amplify the technique's effectiveness. Impossible. The alien's thoughts echoed through the neural network. The pressure should prevent such precise control. Svetlana Petrova's response was a display of combat evolution that left the observers speechless. She combined Russian Navy combat diving techniques with traditional sambo, creating a fighting style that made the water itself a weapon. Her crystal opponent never saw the final strike coming. Above the combat chamber, the Grand Arbiter watched with growing fascination. They've mastered combat in every environment we've presented. How is this possible? The answer came in the form of Master Sergeant Thompson's performance. The Marine's underwater CQC techniques had been refined through generations of combat divers. His crystal opponent's technological advantages meant nothing against centuries of adapted human combat experience. Change the environment, the Grand Arbiter commanded. Let's see how they handle multiple challenges at once. The chamber transformed, creating sections of different pressures, temperatures, and currents. Aisha Hassan responded by demonstrating why Special Forces training was universal. She moved through the changing environments like a ghost, her combat style adapting with each transition. Your species, a council member observed, treats every environmental challenge as an opportunity to innovate. Walker's final match became a testament to human adaptability. Faced with 3 crystal warriors in a section where the water nearly froze, she unveiled a combat style that combined Navy SEAL cold water training with ancient Hawaiian underwater fighting techniques. The victory was decisive, but the Confederation wasn't finished. The chamber shifted again, this time creating a low-gravity volcanic environment. The temperature soared, and toxic gases filled the air. The Crystal Warriors expected the humans to request a pause for preparation. Instead, Walker's team moved into formation without hesitation. Their combat suits, modified with human ingenuity, handled the extreme conditions while they demonstrated why Earth's special forces were legendary. Phase 3, the Grand Arbiter announced, and the environment changed once more. A dense urban warfare setting materialized, complete with variable gravity zones and electromagnetic disruption fields. What followed was a masterclass in human combat evolution. Each team member showed how Earth's martial arts had been adapted for every possible battlefield. Thompson's urban combat techniques, Chen's close quarters mastery, Petrova's environmental adaptations, and Hassan's tactical innovations combined into something the galaxy had never witnessed. As the final match concluded, the Grand Arbiter's form pulsed with unprecedented colors. We designed these trials to test the limits of combat capability, he announced. Instead, your species has shown us that we never understood what those limits were. Walker gathered her team as they exited the chamber, their suits still steaming from the various environmental challenges. Every environment is a battlefield, she reminded them, and every battlefield is an opportunity to prove why Earth's warriors never stop evolving. The message was clear. Humanity hadn't just passed these tests. They had redefined what was possible in combat. The galaxy had thrown their most extreme challenges at Earth's warriors, and in response, humans had shown why they were masters of adaptation in every environment. The diplomatic quarter of the Confederation's space station buzzed with unusual activity. In shadow-filled corners and private chambers, representatives from dozens of species gathered in secret. Major Walker found herself at the center of these clandestine meetings, each one more intriguing than the last. "Your combat arts could free us," the delegate from the Proxima colonies whispered, their crystalline form dimmed to near darkness. "For centuries, the High Council has maintained power through technological superiority. But what you've shown us changes everything." Walker sat in a secure conference room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the latest combat trials. Master Sergeant Thompson was currently demonstrating Marine Corps hand-to-hand techniques to a group of eager alien warriors from the Outer Rim worlds. "We've watched every match," a representative from the Sirius cluster added, their crystal structure shifting with excitement. "Your species has done more than master combat. You've proven that technology isn't the only path to power." The political landscape was shifting faster than anyone had anticipated. 3 major systems had already publicly requested human combat instructors, breaking centuries of Confederation protocol. The Grand Arbiter's Council was fracturing over how to handle this unprecedented situation. James Chen entered the room, fresh from a training session where he'd taught Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to crystal warriors. "They're natural grapplers," he reported. "Their physical structure makes them perfect for ground fighting, but no one ever showed them how." Svetlana Petrova's combat seminars had become the most sought-after events on the station. Her demonstration of how Sambo could be adapted for various alien physiologies had drawn attention from even the most traditional Confederation worlds. "The balance of power is shifting," Aisha Hassan observed during a private strategy meeting. "These species have been held back by the belief that combat evolution ended with technology. We're showing them a different path." The situation reached a turning point when the Centauri Systems announced they were establishing their own combat academy, based on human martial arts principles. The Grand Arbiter called an emergency session of the High Council. "This goes beyond the trials," he declared, his crystal form fluctuating between colors. "Humanity has introduced an element of chaos into our carefully ordered society." But it was too late to contain the spread of human combat knowledge. Footage of Walker's team training alien warriors had gone viral across the galactic networks. Species that had been subjugated for generations saw hope in these ancient yet revolutionary fighting arts. "Your methods offer freedom," a coalition of Outer Rim worlds told Walker during a secret meeting. "Not just in combat, but from the technological dependencies the Confederation has used to control us." The human team found themselves walking a diplomatic tightrope. Each training session, each demonstration, each shared technique could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. Walker had to carefully consider every request for training, knowing that their actions could reshape galactic politics. "We're not here to start a revolution," she reminded her team during a private briefing. "But we won't deny anyone the knowledge that could help them stand on equal footing." The day's final meeting brought the most surprising development. A group of crystal warriors, including some of their former opponents, requested political asylum on Earth. They wanted to study human combat arts in their pure form, away from Confederation influence. As the station's artificial night cycle began, Walker stood at a viewport, watching Earth rotate below. The combat trials had evolved into something far more significant than anyone had expected. They weren't just proving humanity's worth. They were catalyzing a transformation that would reshape the galaxy. "Tomorrow's matches will be different," she told her team as they prepared for rest. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species that's been told technology is the only path to power." The seeds of change had been planted, and they were growing faster than anyone could control. The surface of Phobos had been transformed into the most complex combat arena ever created. Holographic barriers divided the Martian moon into different combat zones: urban warfare sectors, zero-G chambers, environmental hazard areas, and underground tunnel networks. This would be the final trial, a test of everything humanity had shown the galaxy. Major Walker stood with her team in the deployment zone, their advanced combat suits gleaming under the harsh Martian sunlight. Across the battlefield waited the Confederation's ultimate warriors, the Crystal Guard, a unit that had never known defeat in 10,000 years. "They've given us everything they have," Walker addressed her team. "Advanced tech, enhanced abilities, perfect combat computers. But we have something they don't understand. The unbroken line of Earth's warrior spirit." The Grand Arbiter's voice echoed across the arena. "This final trial will test not just combat skill, but the very philosophy of warfare itself. Technology versus tradition. Enhancement versus evolution. Begin." The battle erupted across multiple fronts simultaneously. In the urban zone, Master Sergeant Thompson led a strike team against Crystal Warriors using enhanced battle computers. The aliens expected their technology to predict every move. Instead, Thompson's Marine Corps training created scenarios their computers had never encountered. "They can't calculate what they don't understand," Thompson called out as his team used human squad tactics to outmaneuver the Crystal Guard. Centuries of urban combat experience proved more valuable than any battle computer. In the zero-G chamber, James Chen and Svetlana Petrova demonstrated why human martial arts had revolutionized space combat. Their opponents wore gravitic enhancement suits, but Chen's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Petrova's Sambo had evolved beyond the need for such technology. "Watch their formations," Petrova observed. "They fight as individuals enhanced by tech. We fight as a team enhanced by training." Her words proved prophetic, as their coordinated attacks systematically dismantled the Crystal Guard's defenses. Aisha Hassan led the assault through the environmental hazard zones, where extreme conditions tested every aspect of combat ability. The Crystal Guard expected their advanced suits to give them the advantage. They hadn't counted on Hassan's mastery of environmental warfare, honed through years of special forces training. "Adapt and overcome," she reminded her team as they moved through zones of extreme heat, cold, and pressure. Their human combat techniques, refined through generations of warfare in every environment Earth could offer, proved more versatile than any technological solution. The underground sections became Walker's proving ground. Leading a mixed team of human and allied Crystal Warriors, she showed why Earth's combat evolution had changed the galaxy. Every movement combined multiple fighting styles. Every tactic drew from centuries of human battle experience. "Your technology makes you strong," she told a fallen Crystal Guard commander. "But our history makes us unbeatable." The commander's response was to request training in human combat arts, even as the battle still raged. The final confrontation took place in the central arena. The Crystal Guard's supreme commander, enhanced with every combat technology the Confederation possessed, faced Walker's team in a display of martial arts that would be studied for centuries. What the galaxy witnessed was not just a victory, but a revolution in combat philosophy. Human techniques, evolved through countless battles and refined through endless practice, proved more adaptable than any artificial enhancement. As the last Crystal Guard warrior yielded, the Grand Arbiter's voice carried a note of awe. "We sought to test your worth through combat. Instead, you have taught us the true meaning of martial evolution." Walker gathered her team, their suits bearing the marks of battle, but their spirits unbroken. "This victory belongs not just to us, but to every warrior who ever trained, fought, and passed on their knowledge. We are the latest link in a chain that stretches back to the first human who raised their fists in defense of others." The sun set over Mars, casting long shadows across the battlefield where human combat arts had changed the course of galactic history forever. 1 year after the final trial, The Terran Combat Academy stood as a testament to human martial excellence. The massive complex, built into the side of Mount Fuji, blended ancient architecture with advanced alien technology. Major Walker, now Grandmaster Walker, stood at the central training ground, watching his students from 100 different worlds practice their forms. "Remember the fundamentals," she called out to a group of crystal warriors moving through a basic kata. "Power doesn't come from enhancement. It comes from understanding your body's natural movement." In the advanced training halls, Master Sergeant Thompson had transformed Marine Corps combat techniques into a universal system that any species could learn. His classes on unit cohesion and team tactics had revolutionized how the galaxy approached warfare. Humans never stopped learning, he explained to his latest class. Every battle, every training session, every defeat taught us something new. That's the secret we're sharing with the galaxy. The Academy's research wing, led by James Chen, had become the center for combat evolution studies. Holographic displays showed how different species adapted human fighting styles to their unique physiologies. Crystal warriors learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu, energy beings studying boxing, even gaseous entities mastering the principles of Aikido. Each species brings something new to these ancient arts, Chen observed as he watched a crystal student perfect a modified triangle choke. "We're not just teaching, we're growing, evolving, creating new forms of combat that have never existed before." Svetlana Petrova's International Combat Integration Program had spread to every major system in the galaxy. Her methods of combining different fighting styles had created a new generation of warriors who could adapt to any combat situation. "The greatest victory," she told a gathering of instructors, "is not in the fight itself, but in passing knowledge to the next generation." Aisha Hassan had established the Environmental Combat Division, teaching species how to fight effectively in every possible condition. Her training programs had become mandatory for all Confederation peacekeeping forces. The Grand Arbiter, now a regular visitor to the Academy, stood with Walker as they watched the evening training sessions. "Your species has changed everything," he said, his crystal form glowing with respect. "We thought we had reached the peak of combat evolution through technology. You showed us we had barely begun to understand true martial arts." The Academy's influence extended far beyond combat. Species that had been technological rivals for millennia now trained together, learning the human principles of honor, discipline, and mutual respect. The training grounds had become a place where ancient enemies found common ground through shared challenge and growth. "Watch their movement," Walker pointed to a group of advanced students. "They're not just following forms, they're understanding the philosophy behind each technique. That's the real legacy we're creating here." In the Memorial Hall, displays honored the history of human combat arts, from ancient cave paintings of wrestlers to modern special forces training. Each exhibition showed how human martial arts had evolved through countless generations, leading to this moment of galactic integration. As the sun set behind Mount Fuji, a new class of graduates prepared for their final demonstrations. Among them were crystal warriors who had once been opponents, now transformed into teachers who would spread human combat arts throughout the stars. "Remember what brought us here," Walker addressed the graduating class. "Not just skill or strength, but the endless human drive to improve, to adapt, to grow beyond our limits. You carry that spirit now, no matter your world of origin." The legacy of Earth's warriors had become a bridge between worlds, a path to understanding that transcended species and technology. As night fell over the Academy, the lights of 1,000 training halls glowed like stars, each one a beacon of the revolution that had started with a single human challenge. The art of combat had found a new home among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same.